Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heat. It's gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant. Insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. We did it. The season is over. The Grizzlies finished as the 2 seed. Now we wait a week for the Grizzlies' first playoff game. We have a lot to go over in this episode. We now know we're either going to play the Timberwolves or the Lakers in the first round. Kenneth Lofton Jr. scored 42 points on Sunday. We have 2 games to talk about. Technically, big picture, the games really didn't mean anything. But if you think I'm not going to talk about all the stats minutia from the games, you are nuts. Also, more big news. We got an update on Steven Adams. He's out. Kenneth Lofton Jr. got a 4-year deal. Kennedy Chandler is gone. So let's get moving. First of all, let's do the news where Steven Adams is out. We finally got a Steven Adams injury update, not from the team. The team has not provided us with an update, but apparently a source told Adrian Wojnarowski that Steven Adams is likely out for the postseason. I don't know if I was just pessimistic or correctly reading the tea leaves. This is what I expected. When they said, like, we're beginning the evaluation process or we're bringing in doctors to go over these MRIs, that doesn't sound like the guy's okay to go. So we found out no Steven Adams for the postseason. I mean, maybe if the Grizzlies make the NBA Finals, would he be available in June? I don't know. Obviously, this news stinks. It's very, very bad for the Grizzlies. It is a blow to their odds of advancing to the NBA Finals and their odds of advancing to the conference finals and their odds of winning the first round playoff series they have. I think without Steven Adams and, of course, without Brandon Clark, I think they should be favored against the Lakers or the Timberwolves, but I think it's a crushing blow to the team. I thought with Steven Adams, and of course before Brandon Clark got hurt, I thought with Steven Adams and Brandon Clark, this Grizzlies team had just as good of a shot to advance out of the West as anybody. Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. have each individually taken leaps this year. I thought Ja, Dez, Dylan, Jaren, and Steven with Tyus and now Luke Kennard, Brandon Clark, and Santi off the bench, I thought that was good enough to win the West. But, of course, that's not where we're at. It's a massive blow, no Brandon Clark, and now no Steven Adams. If you want to comfort yourself, if you want to encourage yourself about the loss of Steven Adams was not that heavily involved in last year's postseason run. Of course, we had Brandon Clark and Kyle Anderson last year. I mean, just comparing, someone asked me on YouTube, like, is this year's team better than last year's team? I mean, from last year, we've swapped out now Steven Adams, Brandon Clark, Kyle Anderson, DeAnthony Melton, and for some reason, Zaire Williams. 4, we now have Santi Aldama, Luke Kennard, and David Roddy. But of course, maybe more importantly, it's this year we have a leveled up Jaren and Desmond. I think still, even with Jaren and Desmond's improvements, this team is worse. So because of this injury news, because of finding out you're not going to have Steven Adams, the team was faced with a very difficult choice. They decided they couldn't go into the playoffs with only Jaren Jackson Jr., Xavier Tillman, and Santi Aldama as bigs. Also, Santi has an elbow injury, the severity of which we don't know that much about. He was doubtful for the Bucks game on Friday, so hopefully it's not too serious and he can be back for game 1 of the playoffs on Sunday, but right now we don't know. Maybe the team knows, but we, as outsiders, we don't know if Santi Aldama is going to be available for game 1 of the playoffs. So the team had a very tough choice. They needed to add another big to the roster who would be playoff eligible, and the easiest and best option for that would be to promote Kenneth Lofton Jr. off of his two-way contract. And to do that, well, you got to free up a roster spot. They can't get an injury exception because you have to apply for those by January 15th. So you couldn't get any kind of injury exception. To add Kenneth Lofton Jr. to make him eligible for the playoffs, you had to cut somebody, and they chose to cut Kennedy Chandler. So despite being drafted with the 38th pick this last year, despite, honestly, maybe playing his best game of his career against the Pelicans, despite receiving one of the most lucrative contracts ever for an American second-round draft pick, the Grizzlies waived Kennedy Chandler. I understand the thought process. I understand you have to have a big. You can't go into the playoffs with only 3 bigs and one of them with an elbow injury. If Jaren fouls out, if Jaren gets in foul trouble, if Tillman gets in foul trouble, if any of those guys get injured, you can't be that shorthanded up front. So you have to let go of one of your projects. Now, I think at the time, it was fair to ask if this was a best use of your team's resources and roster spots. At the time, on draft night, I think most people pointed out it was kind of weird that the Grizzlies were using 3 roster spots on rookies for a team on the precipice of competing for a title every single season. I know I said it, and I think a lot of people said it. It's strange to use 3 of your guaranteed roster spots on rookies. Also, I've said it a few times, to draft an undersized point guard as a project when you already have a young all-NBA point guard, it's a little bit undersized, seemed like a strange use of resources. Also on your roster, you had Tyus Jones. You had Ja Morant and Tyus Jones. Why are we drafting a 20-year-old point guard? Why are we trading up to add another rookie to the roster? And now this rookie's gone, so it makes that decision look even worse in retrospect. You can't forecast injuries, I guess. You know, you wouldn't know that you're going to lose Brandon Clark and Steven Adams. But one of the issues with using 3 roster spots on rookies instead of players who might contribute in the playoffs is your depth is seriously hampered. And if you get some bad luck with injuries, you're going to be really shorthanded. And that's what happened. Because of this terrible injury luck with Brandon Clark and Steven Adams, the choice to try to restock the cupboard with young projects and cheaper contracts, it looks like the wrong path. You took away your depth. You were gambling. You wouldn't have injury issues. That's a gamble the Grizzlies lost. I mean, maybe the idea of drafting Kennedy Chandler could have been that makes Tyus Jones maybe more expendable. And you're thinking last season or last summer that, hey, this is the year we might trade Tyus Jones. Remember, they paid Tyus Jones a lot of money. Some of that is because he's maybe the best backup point guard in the NBA. I think some of that was for matching contract reasons, if you needed to include him in a trade. So you thought maybe last summer, hey, we'll draft this guy. Maybe he's great. Maybe he can be our Tyus Jones replacement. Maybe that makes it easier for us to trade Tyus Jones during the season. Like, again, that's a fair thought process. But the team had to give up on it. And now basically that choice to draft Kennedy Chandler, to trade up and get Kennedy Chandler, ends up being a bit of a waste because now it's dead money for the next couple of seasons. I mean, good for Kennedy. He gets his $4.9 million guaranteed. 3 of the 4 years of his deal were fully guaranteed. So the Grizzlies will have a little bit of dead money in the next couple of seasons. That's not a big deal. I mean, it's basically why you sign these second-round draft picks to longer contracts. You risk the chance that you might have to waive them and have dead money on the books. You risk that against hitting a home run on a second-round pick. And like Xavier Tillman, who's been a contributor and now is going to be a huge contributor for the Grizzlies in the postseason, he's on a super cheap contract. And you see teams like the Thunder, they have Lou Dort on an unbelievably cheap contract, or they had him on an unbelievably cheap contract. So like if you hit on any of your second round picks and you get them for 4 years, it becomes this massive bargain. So because of that, I guess much like venture capitalists and angel investors, you don't mind losing on a lot of your investments in case one of your investments goes big. So that's what the Grizzlies have done here. But no more Kennedy Chandler on the team. The flip side of the coin is now the Grizzlies have signed Kenneth Lofton Jr. He'll be on the team for the next 3 years, or at least he'll be under team control for the next 3 years. He's not going to go into restricted free agency. And Kenneth Lofton Jr. responded with quite the game. 42 points against the Thunder on Sunday. I guess I'll get to that in a second. But that's the whole news as far as the big news update for the Grizzlies. No Steven Adams. Still waiting for an official word from Team PR. Kenneth Lofton Jr. gets a 4-year deal. One of those years is this season. So 3 years past this year. And we're going to assume that third year is probably not fully guaranteed, although maybe it is. And then Kennedy Chandler had to get let go. Let's turn back before we talk about the weird game, the final game of the regular season. Let's talk about the win over the Bucks. It was sort of a full dress rehearsal for the Grizzlies against a Bucks JV squad. The most interesting thing about this lineup-wise is they chose to start Ja Morant, Luke Kennard, Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, and Jaren Jackson Jr. Tillman was healthy and available and played, but he came off the bench. They went with this lineup that I think a lot of us wanted to see. It's undersized, obviously. It has defensive and rebounding questions, obviously. It turned out that the Bucks C team dropped 72 points on them in the first half. The Grizzlies were losing 72-71 at halftime. Now, I'm not going to draw too many conclusions to the exact lineup that was used and this spectacular shooting performance of the Bucks. The Bucks backups made 15 threes in the first half. This was the most points allowed by the Grizzlies in any first half this season. This first half was just the second time in franchise history that the Grizzlies have scored 70 or more and also allowed 70 or more. I'm not blaming the lineup. Not yet. By the way, this lineup went off in the third quarter. The Grizzlies got down to business. The Grizzlies had a 23-0 run in the third quarter. It was tied at 79. Then the Grizzlies scored 23 in a row. Eventually, they were up like 114-89. Got some extended garbage time in the fourth quarter. I wonder if they just wanted to try this lineup out in what they knew was going to be their final game of the regular players because they weren't going to play. You know, if they won on Friday and they had that 2 seed wrapped up, you knew they weren't going to play the regular guys against the Thunder on Sunday. So I think they wanted to try this out and just get some looks at it and just get some reps of these guys playing together. They probably knew as a team at that point already, Steven Adams is not going to be here for a while. We need to see how good this lineup can be. It's going to be interesting. I mean, the big question for the Grizzlies in the first round that I think even us Grizzlies experts and hardcore fans don't know yet is what lineups are they going to depend on the most? Is it going to be matchup based? Like we know Ja and Desmond and Dylan and Jaren are the 4. Who's the 5th? Is it Luke Kennard, who continues to be nuclear from three-point land? Kennard made 5 out of 7 threes in this one. Kennard is shooting 54% from 3 as a Grizzly. Will they go with Luke Kennard? Will they go with Xavier Tillman? Xavier Tillman has been excellent. I, as a default, as you probably know as a listener, I default to defense. Sorry, Luke Kennard. I feel safer with Xavier Tillman out there as a 5th man. Is Roddy going to get more of that opportunity? I wouldn't bet on it. Is Conchar going to get more of that opportunity? I still wouldn't bet on it. It's probably going to come down to Luke Kennard or Xavier Tillman. Should Tyus Jones get that opportunity? Should we run Tyus and Ja together? You guys know, again, if you've listened for any amount of time, I don't love the dual point guard lineups, but at this point, yeah, why not? We're going to have to try, I think, a lot of things in the postseason, and I definitely think Ja and Tyus playing together. I mean, should Santi Aldama get that chance? The Jaren and Santi lineup data is still very, very good. But I think the rest of our season is going to be us arguing, debating, wondering who the fifth player should be alongside Ja, Desmond, Dylan, and Jaren. I don't know if there's a right answer or a wrong answer. I think they all have pretty solid merits. But Kennard definitely showed up offensively in this game, gives a good case for showing why he should be the fifth guy, maybe as the fifth starter or at least the closer. This season, by the way, I'm going to update this stat. Luke Kennard has made 74 threes on the Grizzlies in 24 games. That's over 3 makes per game. Like I said, shooting 54% from 3. This year on the Clippers, he played 35 games. So 11 more games on the Clippers, 15 fewer made threes. He shot 44.7% from 3 on the Clippers. Only made 59 threes in 35 games. He has 74 makes in 24 games on the Grizzlies. I mean, you put all that together, it's good enough for Luke Kennard to lead the NBA in three-point percentage for the second straight season. In this game against the Bucks, Kennard passed Wayne Selden and Dennis Scott, the all-time franchise leaderboard for made threes. He's tied at 52nd. In 24 games, he's gotten up to 52nd. Most made threes in franchise history. He's tied with Byron Scott from the Vancouver days and Garrett Temple. Also in this game against the Bucks, I should have mentioned it before now, Jaren Jackson Jr. became the first player in NBA history to put up at least 35 points, 3 blocks, and 3 made threes in consecutive games. A feat that no one has ever done before. Jaren Jackson Jr. scored 36, blocked 3 shots, made 5 out of 6 threes. Jaren has now scored 30 or more in 3 of his last 4 games. In Jaren's last 13 games, he's averaging 25.5 points per game. Jaren has stepped up into this offensive force. Another big question for the playoffs is how much of this scoring explosion from Jaren is sustainable and legitimate, and maybe not just a product of late season basketball, tired opponents, weak opponents, lack of game planning, lack of practicing for your opponents. Will this scoring outbreak continue when you're in a playoff series and the other team can specifically game plan for you? But Jaren has been on an absolute tear. Coming into this year, Jaren had 4 30-point games in his career. He's had, like I said, 3 in the last 4 games. He finished this season with 6 30-point games. The Grizzlies as a team had 41 30-point games this year. That's by far the most they've ever done in a season. Last season, thanks to Ja Morant having 24 30-point games and Desmond Bane had 4 and Dylan Brooks had 2. Last season, they had a total of 30 games where any individual scored 30 or more. This year, they've had 41. Ja, 21. Desmond, 8. Jaren, 6. Dylan Brooks, 4. Luke Kennard, 1. Kenneth Lofton Jr., 1. I can't wait to talk about this Kenneth Lofton Jr. Game. Still, it's not yet the time. But powered by Jaren's scoring and three-point shooting and Luke Kennard's three-point shooting, the Grizzlies made 20 threes in this game. They racked up a season-high 39 assists. This was the second most threes in a game for the team this season, behind the 25 they had against the Rockets in the Luke Kennard 10 three-pointer game. They did allow 21 threes against the Bucks, and that was the second straight game where they allowed 21 threes. First time in franchise history where they've allowed 20 or more threes in consecutive games. Desmond Bane made 4 threes. He had 16 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. He did snap his 8-game streak of scoring 20 or more. Dylan Brooks had 11 points, was only 1 of 8 from 3, but He kept his streak alive for games with a three-pointer. He now has 23 straight games with at least one made three. That's the sixth longest streak in franchise history. The franchise record is 37 straight games by Bane. The other guys ahead of him, it's Bane, Tyreek Evans, Bane again, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Mike Miller. John Conchar had a huge game against the Bucks. 13 points, 7 rebounds, 5 steals, 3 assists. He went 35 straight games without scoring in double figures, and then he scored in double figures 2 games in a row against the Bucks and Pelicans. He did not keep that going against the Thunder, despite playing 35 minutes. Tyus Jones had 10 points, 9 assists, and 0 turnovers against the Bucks. He finished this year as the NBA leader in assist-to-turnover ratio, and that is the 5th straight year he has done that. No one's ever done that before. All right, now let's take a quick break, and we'll come back, and we'll talk about Junior's big game. Grizz fans, 2023-2024 Grizzlies season tickets are on sale now. Season tickets are the best way to guarantee your seats to the biggest matchups at the lowest prices all season long, as well as receive early access to 2023 playoff tickets before they go on sale to the general public. For more information, visit grizzlies.com/season tickets or call 901-888-HOOP today. All right, so the last day of the regular season always features ridiculous games between teams that are resting all their players, teams that some of them desperately want to win. Many of them just don't want any of their regular players to get hurt. In my memory, it used to be, all right, you rested your all-stars. You rested your top players. Now it's become you rest your top 8. You only play 6 guys. The Grizzlies played 6 guys against the Thunder. Technically, the Thunder, they wanted to lose. The Thunder also, they got a play-in game on Wednesday. They want to keep their main guys healthy, but also, if the Thunder miss the playoffs, which is probable, statistically probable, they're the 10 seed. They got to win twice on the road to make the playoffs. Like, they're going to go into the lottery, and losing this game gave them better lottery odds. So they wanted to lose, but they were playing a Grizzlies team featuring Vince Williams Jr. in his first career start, Jacob Gilyard in his first NBA game. The Grizzlies signed Jacob Gilyard to a two-way contract. After they waived Kennedy Chandler, they gave Kenneth Lofton Jr. a real contract, got him off the two-way spot. They had an open two-way spot. And they signed Jacob Gilyard, a guy who played for the Hustle this year, just to have someone who can dribble. They knew Tyus Jones and John Morant were going to sit out on Sunday. They cut Kennedy Chandler. They just needed anyone to dribble and to play 40 minutes. And that's what Jacob Gilyard did. By the way, Jacob Gilyard becomes the shortest player in Grizzlies franchise history, surpassing Brevin Knight and Damon Stoudemire. This is according to Basketball Reference. Brevin Knight, Damon Stoudemire, both listed at 5'10". Jacob Gilyard listed at 5'9". Gilyard, by the way, finished with 3 points, 7 assists, 4 rebounds, 3 steals, a couple of turnovers. He only attempted 3 shots, all of them three-pointers. He attempted no shots in the second half. Played 20 minutes and took no shots. This game, obviously, it defies analysis. We don't care exactly what happened. I mean, there were some stats, and of course, that's what we're going to talk about. Kenneth Lofton Jr. scored 42. That's the most points by any rookie in his first start ever recorded. Now, the Basketball Reference database only goes back to 1970. I say only back to 1970. That's 52 seasons. We don't know exactly if, who started when. They didn't keep track of starts until 1970. But this is the most points in the last 52 years ever recorded for a rookie in his first career start. Again, I'd like to say for the last time, none of these stats are meaningful. They're just fun. So now I'm just going to say all the stats. Junior scored 42. He also got 14 rebounds. The number of players in Grizzlies franchise history with 40-point, 10 rebound games, there's now 4, counting Kenneth Lofton Jr. Bryant Reeves has 1. Pau Gasol has 1. Ja Morant has 1. Zach Randolph and Mark Gasol have 0. Kenneth Lofton Jr. has 1. Junior scored 35 points in the second half. That's the highest scoring half in Grizzlies franchise history. Kenneth Lofton Jr. erased Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant from the record books with their 34-point halves. This is the third most points in a half by a rookie on record. These records, as far as play-by-play data, breaking it down between first halves and second halves, only goes back to 1996-97. Most points by a rookie in a half, according to StatHead, Brandon Jennings had 45. Allen Iverson had 39. Junior had 35. Here's the list of rookies to have at least 42 points and 14 rebounds in a game in the last 40 years. Blake Griffin, Shaq, Derek Coleman, Michael Jordan, Kenneth Lofton Jr. Kenneth Lofton Jr. also had 0 assists, which is just kind of funny. Here's the silly stat, because remember, getting 0 assists, not preferred. It's not good. But Kenneth Lofton Jr. is the first rookie since Wilt Chamberlain to have at least 42 points and 14 rebounds while also getting 0 assists. This is the second 40-point, 0 assist game in Grizzlies franchise history. Mike Miller did it too. This is the highest scoring game for any rookie in Grizzlies franchise history. Kenneth Lofton Jr. got himself a contract and then went out and got himself some buckets. Now, I guess we are supposed to try to analyze, will this work in the postseason? I'm not talking about scoring 40 or 30. I'm just talking about Junior playing 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, and not being a liability on defense. Man, give it a go. It's kind of how I feel. Can he be like a bench scoring specialist a la maybe Corliss Williamson from the Pistons teams back in the late 90s, early 2000s? I like to think of him like Tayshaun Prince, where Tayshaun Prince, who's now in the Grizzlies front office. Tayshaun Prince, when he was a rookie on the Pistons, this is one of my favorite teams back in the day. Before I had a true favorite team, I bounced around. This is when I think the Pistons were my favorite team. Tayshaun Prince is a rookie, barely played in the regular season. He played a little over 400 minutes his rookie year, the entire regular season. When it got to the postseason, they decided to start playing him, and he was very, very effective. And in the postseason, Tayshaun Prince started a couple games. He played a total of 380 minutes in that postseason. The Pistons made the conference finals, somewhat surprisingly, riding Tayshaun Prince, who they hadn't played in the regular season. I have dreams we could see something similar. Now, it's probably going to be a break glass in case of emergency situation for Kenneth Lofton Jr., but he's someone that other teams are going to have difficulty, I think, guarding. And I think it might be a fun, little X factor to try out in these playoff series. But what an unbelievably fun second half and overall game for Kenneth Lofton Jr. I mean, yeah, all right, the Grizzlies were ahead at halftime, and they lost by a lot. So maybe Kenneth Lofton Jr. going nuts in the second half wasn't good for the Grizzlies' overall results, but the team was tired. They only played 6 guys. Vince Williams Jr. played the entire 48 minutes. Let's talk about Vince Williams Jr. now. Vince Williams Jr. set or matched his career high in every single statistical category in this game. That's what I guess playing 48 minutes will do for you. He tied his career high with 1 made 3. Here's the bad news. He set his career high with 14 three-pointers attempted. He went 1 for 14 from 3. He took more three-pointers in this game than Desmond Bane's ever taken in a regular season game. Maybe shoot more threes, Desmond. Vince Williams Jr. missed by far the most three-pointers in a game in Grizzlies franchise history. I'm not mad at Vince. I think the guy was tired. He had to play 48 minutes of an NBA game. Zaire Williams got the start, played a ton. Career high 24 points. Career high 9 assists. I mean, somebody got to score. It's an NBA game, playing 6 players. Somebody's got to score. Zaire gets 24. Kenneth Lofton Jr. gets 42. Just a wild game. Yeah, Roddy played, didn't score or shoot very well. None of these stats matter. They're just for fun. We're just going to smile and laugh at them. We're going to smile and laugh also at John Conchar, who, like I said, had scored in double figures for 2 straight games after not scoring in double figures for the 35 games before that. Conchar played over 35 minutes, and he scored 2 points. Come on, man. This is the anchor man, I'm not mad, I'm impressed reaction. Yeah, he got a couple steals, couple blocks, got some rebounds. Last year, final game of the season, you remember he got a triple-double. I thought he was going to go for a triple-double this game. He scored 2 points. Less than ideal. By the way, this loss actually did perhaps favorably help the Grizzlies' draft pick this year. It moved them into a tie with the Cavaliers. So if they'd won this game, the Grizzlies would have had the 26th pick in this year's draft. Now they're tied with the Cavaliers. There'll be a coin flip to see who gets the 25th pick. So possibly this game improved the Grizzlies draft pick by 1 by losing. Finally, let's look at a couple more stats. This is not like your full end-of-season wrap-up. I will do that in a future episode. But a couple of notable stats, I guess we can go ahead and say. Ja Morant did, in fact, set a new franchise scoring record in points per game just on basis of him playing enough games to qualify, since last season did not qualify because of games played. And then Desmond Bane posted the 4th highest points per game season in franchise history. But it was the 2nd highest in the Memphis era. So Ja Morant and Desmond Bane posted the top 2 points per game seasons officially in franchise history this season. A couple of stats as we look ahead to the postseason. And again, this is not going to be a full breakdown of our playoff outlook, but just some things that I've been looking up and I've been considering for the season. All right, without Brandon Clark and without Steven Adams, which is the situation we're in. Okay. For the season, if you look at their lineup data on cleaning the glass, and this isn't necessarily reflective of who the Grizzlies are without Steven Adams and Brandon Clark, because by omitting all minutes those guys played or all possessions those guys played, you're throwing out a lot of your good stats when you're playing with the other starters. But still, I guess they can give us a little bit of an idea of who the Grizzlies are. The Grizzlies have a plus 4.7 net rating when Brandon Clark and Steven Adams don't play. A little bit less than their overall net rating of plus 5. By the way, the Grizzlies have the 3rd best net rating in the NBA, according to Cleaning the Glass for this season. They're 11th in offensive rating and 2nd in defensive rating. Since February 1st, the Grizzlies have the 14th best offense and the 6th best defense. They have the 8th best point differential since then. But if you look at the data when Steven Adams and Brandon Clark weren't on the court, the Grizzlies still had a 117 offensive rating, which would have been good enough for about 7th in the league. Their defensive rating was 112.3, which is right around 5th, or would have been 5th in the NBA in defense. Their effective field goal percentage, honestly, is pretty good, 55%, which is above average, which is better than their normal season averages. They have a terrible free throw rate, meaning they don't get to the line very much. They have a not good offensive rebound percentage. Again, we think of this Grizzlies team as being an elite offensive rebounding team. They are not. Without Steven Adams, they are not an elite offensive rebounding team. They get 25.7% of their missed shots, which is in the 36th percentile, according to Cleaning the Glass. They allow their opponents to get 27.9% of the offensive rebounds available, which is 34th percent. So we know this. They're a below average offensive and defensive rebounding team without Steven Adams. We hope the offense clicks up, but technically the offense is not better. They're making a lot more threes since the acquisition of Luke Kennard. And that's kind of going to be the route we go with. If you look at lineup data or if you look at net rating data for just the Grizzlies top 10, so I'm shaving LaRavia minutes out. I'm shaving out Kennedy Chandler, guys who aren't on the team anymore. I'm just looking at the Grizzlies net rating this season using only these players. Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, Jaren Jackson Jr., Xavier Tillman, Tyus Jones, Luke Kennard, David Roddy, John Conchar, and Santi Aldama. Grizzlies lineups using only those players have a plus 7.4 net rating, which is rather good. They have a 119.4 offensive rating, which is good, very good. And again, a 112 defensive rating, which is quite good. So nice numbers there. Of course, the rebounding numbers, still bad. They only get 24% of available offensive rebounds, and they allow their opponent to get 28% of offensive rebounds, which is, again, those aren't good numbers. Those are like 30th percentile, 25th percentile. Not great stuff there. Now, looking at a specific matchup with the Timberwolves or the Lakers, I feel like I want the Timberwolves. Some of that is based on Jaden McDaniels breaking his hand on Sunday, so they'll be a little bit more shorthanded. I think the Lakers matchup is going to be very, very tough if it happens. It's more likely to happen, but I guess I won't get ahead of myself. I'll wait to see what happens on Tuesday night before breaking down the series and providing any of my predictions. By the way, for that Tuesday night play-in game, Lakers against Timberwolves, I'll be hosting a playback watch party in my playback room, playback.tv/fastbreakbreakfast. Come join me in there as we can watch the Lakers and Timberwolves together. Also, if you're in the Nashville area, we will be having a watch party for the Grizzlies playoff game on Sunday. That time is still to be determined. They haven't told us when the game's going to happen, but it is going to happen on Sunday, April 16th. I will probably be at the game, but we'll be still having a watch party there and having somebody will be giving away prizes to everyone there. And of course, it'll be packed probably with other Grizzlies fans. So come join other members of Grizz Nation in the Nashville area and cheer on the Memphis Grizzlies in Game 1. Anyways, that's all I got for today. I appreciate everyone who listens to these episodes. Please share them with a friend. Even if you listen to the audio versions, just do me a favor. Also, subscribe to the YouTube version. That really helps me out. Hope you have a great Monday. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.